Yo brevemente, simplemente, bueno, voy a hablar en castellano ahora para todo el mundo. I'm going to talk just in Spanish, a brief introduction, okay, in the name of the Institute, just to frame what we are doing, okay, Namrata?
Perfect.
So I want to, bueno, quiero dar la bienvenida pues, a todas las personas que están asistiendo aquí en la sala de reuniones internacionales de la Universidad de Alcalá. Este jueves 20 de febrero de 2025 tenemos la oportunidad de conversar con Namrata Sharma, que es una conocida ya por parte del Instituto. Hemos hecho varias colaboraciones de investigación y de docencia con ella. Y esta es una más espero, muchas más relaciones que vamos a mantener. Y para nosotros es muy satisfactorio poder tener este momento dentro de lo que son las actividades que organizamos en el Instituto de Investigación, Educación y Desarrollo de Daisaku Ikeda, avanzar en la divulgación y el conocimiento de una nueva publicación que es justamente la creación de valor y la educación de la ciudadanía global. Esto es un concepto un poco ajeno o poco conocido probablemente en el contexto hispanohablante, quiero decir, pero espero que cada vez vaya siendo más frecuente escucharlo y como vamos a ver en la discusión, yo creo que es un concepto necesario sobre todo para ser introducido en el contexto educativo. Y como director del instituto es lo único que quería, porque quiero darle la palabra a la persona que realmente ha organizado el evento y lo va a dirigir, que es mi compañera subdirectora del instituto, Ana Belén García Varela.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, yo también quería agradecer a las personas que nos acompañan hoy, que hayan venido hasta aquí para este día tan especial, ¿no?, que llevamos preparando con mucho cariño. Hoy, además, es el día del lanzamiento del libro, entonces para nosotros será muy especial hacerlo también hoy. Dejaremos la sesión también grabada para que se pueda ver en diferido. Y bueno, me hace mucha ilusión, ¿no?, como decía, presentar este libro, Education for Sustainability and Global Citizenship, de la doctora Namrata Sharma. Es para mí un honor, ¿no?, haber preparado este evento junto con ella. Esperamos que sea de gran interés esta publicación y conecta directamente, ¿no?, con el trabajo que estamos desarrollando, como decía Alejandro, dentro del Instituto de Investigación en Educación y Desarrollo Daisaku Ikeda. La doctora Namrata Sharma es una experta reconocida en educación para la ciudadanía global, la educación para la sostenibilidad y la educación comparada e internacional. Actualmente es profesora en la State University de Nueva York y trabaja como consultora internacional para organismos de gran prestigio como la UNESCO. Además, forma parte de importantes consejos académicos como el International Research Center on Global Citizenship Education en Italia y el Ikeda Center for Value Creation en India. Su trayectoria académica es amplia y diversa, pero quería destacar su doctorado en educación en la Universidad de Londres, en el Institute of Education, donde realizó también estudios postdoctorales. Y quería también destacar de su formación en educación en la Universidad Soka en Japón, que le ha permitido trabajar como investigadora y docente en diferentes universidades del mundo de gran prestigio. La doctora Sharma ha sido reconocida internacionalmente por su trabajo en educación global y sostenibilidad, colaborando con académicos e investigadores de distintos países. Su investigación ha sido clave para fortalecer la conexión entre las iniciativas lideradas por la UNESCO en ciudadanía global y sostenibilidad. Hoy nos presenta su nuevo libro, Education for Sustainability and Global Citizenship, una obra que nos ofrece ideas inspiradoras y estrategias clave para transformar la educación en un verdadero motor de cambio social. Nos invita a repensar la manera en que educamos a las nuevas generaciones, promoviendo valores interculturales, justicia ambiental y responsabilidad global. Vivimos en un mundo interconectado y en constante transformación, donde la educación juega un papel fundamental en la construcción de sociedades más justas, equitativas y sostenibles. En este contexto, la obra que hoy presentamos nos anima a reflexionar sobre la urgencia de integrar la sostenibilidad y la ciudadanía global en los procesos educativos. En unos momentos tendremos la oportunidad de escuchar a la doctora Namrata Sharma, que compartirá con nosotros algunas ideas claves de su libro. Posteriormente, queremos abrir el diálogo con las personas que estáis aquí presentes para que podamos compartir preguntas, reflexiones con la autora. Por eso os animo a tomar nota o a apuntar alguna pregunta que os pueda surgir para poder compartirla más adelante con ella. Y bueno, sin más, me gustaría darle la palabra a Namrata para que pueda compartir con nosotros algunas de sus ideas como una manera de comenzar a abrir el diálogo. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much, Alejandro. I truly appreciate. And if it's okay, then I will just start with my presentation now. Perfect. And can I share my screen to show you my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes? Okay,
Yes,
perfect. So you're going to then see for my, kind of the next 20 minutes, I'm sorry, you will have to only see the PowerPoint. And if you do have any technical sort of lags at your end, some sort of issues, do let me know and I'll turn off the PowerPoint. But I really want to welcome you with deep thanks. Thank you so very much for being here today. And, particularly I would like to thank the Ikeda Institute, the Daisaku Ikeda Research Institute for Education and Development, University of Alcala and Soka University, Japan. And, more than anyone, of course, all the people who worked behind the scenes to make this event possible, including especially the translators today. So my deep thanks to you. And without further ado, I will get into my presentation for the next about 15-20 minutes or so, and then very much look forward to our discussions. So hello again, and thank you so much for organizing this event, to launch my new book. I'm particularly excited because Daisaku Ikeda, the Japanese educator's ideas, are a focal point of inquiry in my scholarly work. So this is so meaningful to first launch my book today here on the day that it has, been released. But I also hope in today's discussions, we will have the opportunity to reflect collectively as citizens on how to better understand the current sustainability crisis and build planetary consciousness. So I'm going to go a little slow, not too slow, but a little slow so the translators can, as far as possible, not have too many difficulties in simultaneous translation. So before going into my own talk, I want to just share some context to my, work. I think most people here might be familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These global goals were adopted in 2015 with the aim of building a more sustainable world. Of these 17 goals, goal 4 here, so goal 4 outlines education for sustainable development and global citizenship education. Education for sustainable development, which is contained within goal 4, actually applies to all 17 goals because the aim is to foster learners to achieve these 17 goals. So my work also extends to the other goals. Education for sustainable development and global citizenship education. These are also key initiatives that are led by UNESCO. UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So this is how I contextualize my work. My work relates to the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular Goal 4. But I also want to clarify, what is meant by sustainability? So what does sustainability mean to you? Academic literature contends that sustainability differs from ecology. Ecology is the study of organisms and their environment. Sustainability, however, is about how people live with each other within planetary limits. So, my argument, within that is that we need an integrated approach to learning for sustainability to support learners in developing the awareness to act as responsible individuals and global citizens. However, we see that the current practice of education is often focused on educating for profit, rather than educating for planetary citizenship. And of course, that's okay. I mean, we need to educate for profit. But in some ways, we do need a paradigm shift. And what is the shift, that I am talking about? It is the shift that moves beyond the dominance of neoliberal capitalism and the promotion of individualism and anthropocentrism, taking humans as the focus of everything. We sort of expand our focus beyond this dominant paradigm to locating paradigms that promote understanding of interdependencies, education as a common good, and an interconnected future. And so, how can education be based on more integrated, holistic paradigms? So, what are some of the examples of such integrated paradigms? Such integrated paradigms, and there are so many of them. Let's say, Ubuntu, Bunvivir, these are integrated paradigms that we find from different parts of the world, including Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa. Examples of integrated paradigms that promote a harmonious coexistence between humans, nature, and all species also include proposals by Ikeda. And I think these paradigms are really important for especially one reason. It is to challenge the helper and helpee binary within global education. So what does that mean? Scholarly work suggests that within education for sustainability and global citizenship, there are these tensions on who is seen as developed and who is seen as developing, not just between people, but also between humans and nature, humans and all species. What such studies suggest is that often within education for sustainability and global citizenship, the aim is to foster learners as helpers or rescuers of the planet. So we often find within sustainability initiatives, especially within the practice, it turns out to be us as human beings rescuing the planet, Rather than that, can we frame education based on a more interdependent view of life and an interdependent framework for education? So Ikeda's notion of harmonious coexistence as an example of an integrated paradigm has influenced various educational and sustainability initiatives. So one example of that is the Soka Amazon Institute, of which Ikeda is the founder. So this institute, Amazon Institute, is a nature reserve in the city of Manaus in Brazil and is located in the heart of the Amazon forest. So this institute promotes environmental education, and among its sustainability programs are planting seeds initiatives, which is a core feature of the institute. So a recent research study by a colleague and myself that includes interviews that we conducted with the institute's key staff. So through our studies, we find that these sowing initiatives focus not only on the conservation, but also on giving opportunities to people to have an experience with nature, planting a tree and creating a link with each individual and nature. So one of these sowing initiatives that are taking place within the Soka Amazon Institute includes the Seeds of Life project. And I really am very fascinated by this project, the Seeds of Life project at the Soka Amazon Institute. In this project, for every child born in one public maternity hospital in the city of Manaus, a tree is planted with the help of the institute. So along with the baby's birth certificate, parents receive a planting certificate issued with the child's name, identifying the species planted and the geolocation. So just imagine in this public sort of maternity hospital in Manaus, for every child born, a tree is planted, and the parents, when they receive the birth certificate, they also get a planting certificate, which has the details of the plant that is sowed at the time the child was born. So the Seeds of Life project not only considers the importance of planting trees in Manaus city, but also aims for sustainable growth and relationship building between people and nature. The idea is to help expand the city's green areas while involving local people in this process, including young people from their birth. So in this new book, I developed various outcomes from this study that my colleague and I had done and showcase the practice of harmonious coexistence, within the Soka Amazon Institute as an example, including within the environmental education program that the Institute runs as a non-government organization. And, and I sort of study and develop outcomes for non-government organizations, for non-formal education, but also for formal education, and how harmonious coexistence can inform educational practice across various settings. So here I'd just like to pause for a second and, go to this term called kyosei, which you'll see on the slide. The term kyosei has been translated from Ikeda's work in Japanese into English in different ways. So we often read the translation as harmonious coexistence, but also we find the term peaceful coexistence, multicultural coexistence, and the term creative coexistence, in the translation of Ikeda's work from Japanese to English. The term, in fact, creative coexistence is discussed in a lecture that Ikeda delivered in 1996 at the Teachers College in Columbia University, New York, where he shares thoughts on education for global citizenship. And I know this speech has been translated into Spanish and published in the book A New Humanism, released through the Ikeda Institute. So if you have not got a chance, I would urge you to read this book, which was released by the Ikeda Institute and talks about the notion of creative coexistence or harmonious coexistence that Ikeda engages with. So in engaging such discussions, and central to my new book are the following key questions. So one of the key questions in my book is, how can education be reframed in light of the environmental crisis? The second question is, how do we address teaching for sustainability and global citizenship based on alternative paradigms? So we're, how can we teach for sustainability, not just about sustainability, but for sustainability and global citizenship, based on not just in the neoliberal paradigm, but alternative and more holistic integrated paradigms. And my argument is that a shift in paradigm and perspectives, from this dominant neoliberal paradigm, very sort of capitalistic Western worldview, to more integrated worldviews, can allow for the practice of education, the knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that we foster within learners to be much more sort of creative and dynamic. So on that note, value creating global citizenship education is a pedagogical approach to learning for sustainability that I have proposed through my work. It is a pedagogical approach that advances learning for sustainability based on an integrated view of life. It engages with the values, interests, and beliefs of learners and is founded on a trust in the learner's capacity to create value and meaning for self and others. So I know this is new information for many people here, but basically this paradigm is based on my long-term work of engaging with integrated paradigms. And I take Ikeda's ideas, as his Japanese, this Japanese thinker, Ikeda's ideas, has a focal point of study and inquiry in my work, but also looking at different sort of viewpoints from around the globe. So this approach has 6 themes. I won't go into the details of these because of the limitations of time today. But overall, these themes have a bearing on issues such as transformative learning, peace, and human rights education. So, they mainly are focused on transformative learning, peace, and human rights education. So what are some of the key contributions of my work? One of the key focuses of this approach that I, just discussed, the value creating approach, is to foster individuals who can take collective action as global citizens. Scholarly work suggests that in the efforts to empower the individual, the current practice of global citizenship education can easily get trapped in promoting individualism. In this context, a value-creating paradigm can have a substantive role in nurturing individuals who can lead contributive lives through education for sustainable development and global citizenship. So what is the key focus here? It is to build relationships through this approach between learners and their natural, social, and educational environments. So this is the first contribution my work hopes to make to the discourse. Second, as suggested, there is a need for an intercultural approach to learning for sustainability and global citizenship within the wider debates on global education. So what do I mean by this? So there are various cultural understandings of how to foster sustainable mindsets and sustainable lifestyles. We know this from the culture we grew up in. This needs to be part of our conversations on educating for sustainability and global citizenship. How different cultures inform sustainable mindsets. A dialogic engagement with multiple worldviews within policy and curriculum can bring into focus different ways of thinking about ourselves, society, nature, and the universe, and the need for the intercultural dimension of education. And I think in this regard, the history of Alcala as the city of knowledge has been a model for humanity as to how to integrate intercultural understandings for a more peaceful and sustainable world. So third, my work addresses the implications of the environmental crisis on formal and non-formal education from a human rights position. So although the Sustainable Development Goals are an attempt to build a more peaceful and sustainable world, they are not often framed as being part of the international human rights law. So what am I proposing? What I'm proposing is, can we include Earth-centered laws and actions within the debates around integrating global education for policy enactment in education at different institutional levels? The key question is to ask, how can education for sustainability be more inclusive? It is about education and engaging people, promoting social inclusion and social justice, including the decolonization of educational systems. Making sustainability inclusive is also about advocating for ecological justice, which encompasses the rights of the nature. How do we encompass the recognition of the rights of nature and the implementation of earth laws, such as promoted by the United Nations Forum Harmony with Nature Knowledge Network, with which I am associated. Enhancing critical awareness through education for sustainability and global citizenship, for example, the correlation between the rights of nature and the constitutional human right to a healthy environment. So this is, I think, the first time, that within a academic book on education for sustainability and global citizenship, that the rights of nature and the constitutional human right to a healthy environment are not only being discussed, but also being brought together. And so the correlation, I think, between these two, that has been proved to be inseparable from a collection of worldwide data, suggests that nation states whose constitutions uphold the human right to a healthy environment not only have shown significant and improved results in terms of environmental growth, for example, clearer air, universal access to safe drinking water, non-toxic environments, and healthier ecosystems, But these nation states have also demonstrated positive social and economic growth. So we can see that it's a win-win situation. Protecting the rights of nature and the constitutional human right to a healthy environment is a win-win situation that I think students really need to have a critical understanding and awareness of. So this is my last slide, and I in this book discuss much more in detail what are the implications of human right for a healthy environment and nature rights. What are the implications for education, in particular UNESCO's Greening Education Initiative, so that we can expand the focus from enhancing ecological literacy, not just about learning about ecology or just taking action within our schools and communities, but also developing critical awareness and understanding through education for sustainability and global citizenship, as well as taking collective action as citizens of this planet. So these are kind of this is just an overview of my work, but much more specific teaching guidelines for sustainability education and global citizenship are developed in this book, which I hope very much to discuss when we meet in person this summer. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Well, we have time to a brief discussion, not only with us, but also with the rest of the audience, if you like, or you would like to participate. I don't know if continue in English or
Whatever you want.
in Spanish. Maybe it's more fluent with me if I just use one language, because then, unless I do it, I will begin to mix. It's the worst thing. So there are many insights after listening to you and after reviewing, for example, the excerpts of the book that we had access to. Of course, from the knowledge coming from your previous work. So there are many insights, but I was above all thinking about 3 topics that I would like to mention. And the first one, I think, and it's something I wanted to discuss with you, at least to know what you think about it, is I find this book more focused on epistemological issues, or at least considering a change in that level of epistemology. Because, for example, when you claim the need of decolonization of education, that's a huge change that is not new. Paulo Freire introduced the importance of considering this topic, and that's typical in critical epistemologies. But critical epistemologies are not very common in science, in social science. So on one hand, I find that introducing that epistemological change, or at least the possibility to introduce that critical epistemology, I think that will be a huge change. And in addition to that, we also have the critical pedagogies that are associated to that. How we can change the education if we want to be more critical. So that awareness that you mentioned at the end, that is critical, needs this change in our frame, that there is something else that needs to be relational, not individual, not individualized. And that's a huge change as well. Not only about being critical, but also about being aware of our interdependence, not only with human beings, but also with nature. And are huge ideas and really deep for me. So is that just focusing on the first topic? Do you really think this work is more epistemological in nature? That's the first question. If you want to, we can talk about that if you want.
Yes, thank you so much. I knew, Alejandro, you will have a very good comment and question because we have had so many discussions in the past. So that is really insightful. I really appreciate that. You're absolutely right. It is a huge proposition because we're not just, saying that this policy needs to, the book is not just saying this policy needs to change or this program, or it needs to be integrated, but it's a paradigm shift that is being proposed. And that, of course, is a huge epistemological challenge. At the same time, there are many more other challenges that the book is proposing. Paulo Freire has started to influence the field of global education in the past few years. We see critical pedagogies having a much more influence, within the debates in global education as a field of studies. From Vanessa Andriotti's work to Karen Pashby and Marta Di Costa. So, that is there. At the same time, and Ms. Zach's work, of course. At the same time, that's within the field mostly of global citizenship education within global education. So there are two different debates which don't always come together. Education for sustainable development, related debates on sustainability education and so on, and which also encompasses environmental education and so on. And then on the other hand, we have these debates around global citizenship education within the umbrella term of global education. So bringing in Freire not just into the debates on global citizenship, but also on planetary citizenship and sustainability, and bringing these two together in itself was a big challenge for this work. So some of the chapters engage with a more sort of critical understanding in the Freirean sense that is challenging the current epistemology within global citizenship education. But then in other chapters, I have also tried to move beyond the current debates of global citizenship education and bring in sustainability perspectives so that teachers can use this within their teaching, within the classroom resources. So it's not just so I'm coming to your question, but I'm giving you kind of a bigger complex challenge that I have been working in, because Freire doesn't directly talk about nature. He talks about decolonizing education, right? But I'm also talking about planetary citizenship. So how do you bring the whole thing together? In Ikeda's view, as we know, in Ikeda's view and in many other such frameworks such as Ubuntu from sub-Saharan Africa and Bon Vivir from Latin America, in these views and paradigms, the two are integrated. Global citizenship education, sustainability education are integrated. So how do we then merge the two? So it has to be about that type of a kind of a integrated approach to learning. And then you're right that the epistemology, which underlies both global citizenship and sustainability education, the epistemology needs to be revamped. But you're absolutely accurate that leaving teachers there is where I thought I would not do justice to this work. So at every point, but in particular in chapter 7, I start to develop very clear-cut guidelines for teachers to have a more reflective and dialogic approach to learning for citizenship education, for sustainability education within the classrooms, no matter what subject we are teaching, so that these reflective approaches to learning as teachers, drawing from other work that has been done on teacher education, allows for us to be able to, kind of have a much more objective view of how we, use resources, curriculum resources in our teaching. So I build this sort of critical reflective thinking for teachers within the classroom through providing very clear-cut guidelines in chapter 7 that brings together the entire discussions of the book. So sorry, I made it even more complex than you had posed, but it doesn't just stop at a shift in epistemology. I do provide very, very clear-cut examples for teachers to take back into their classrooms.
That's great, because it's not just an abstract problem for you, the epistemology, but when you mention a change of paradigm, that's a huge change.
Yes.
But it's important that you are adding how to do it in a
Yes.
very concrete way. So it's great. I think that's one of the contributions of the book.
Thank you.
And there's something else
Yes.
to mention. This is briefer, and it's the distinction that you are introducing in page 170 about learning to do based on learning to know and learning to be. So those three distinctions, well, were really curious for me. So would you mind elaborating a little more about what do you mean by those three that I think are really key? Because I think that probably in traditional education, we are just trying to focus on learning to know without specifying what knowing means. But learning to do is something that is more common these days, when education used to be more practical or associated to projects, for example. But that you are also adding learning to be, I think it's quite coherent according to Ikeda's philosophy. But how everything is integrated, I would like to know a little more as a three distinctions that I think is really, really key distinctions. So that's where I was.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, amazing, astute question, Alejandro. This is something I pick up from Tark, T-A-R-C. Tark is a scholar who writes in much more detail about this, and I, cite him in my work. Which is the argument is that specifically within learning for sustainability, we see a big emphasis, and I'll take the UNESCO's Greening Education Partnerships. That particular initiative is the main buzzword today, in sustainability initiatives for those of us working on, sustainability education, working within sustainability education. So if we take the Greening Education Partnerships as an initiative and an example, it is very typical of what I anecdotally also have seen happen in the classrooms, is that a big focus is on, yes, enhancing ecological literacy, within sustainability education, environmental education, education for sustainability, within these umbrella terms. The main focus is, to some extent, to enhance ecological literacy, but a big thrust is on action-oriented programs within the classroom, within schools, within communities, for both formal education and non-formal education. While this is good and it has merits, what Tark is suggesting, and I completely agree, is that it is something that is prompted by the school, by the institution of learning. But if we allow for, the knowledge, like you said, the traditional settings, where you were allowed to think, in the liberal arts, we still have that luxury, right? Or the liberal arts schools and colleges and spaces, we still have that luxury to be able to think about bigger questions. But if we allow for more of that within the classroom and a more sort of reflective and dialogic approach to learning for sustainability, students on their own will come up with what are the issues that need to be looked at within the schools, within, the classroom, the school, and the community, that they as agents of change can participate in. So you don't need to tell them, you need to educate them. But what is happening is a big focus is on action-oriented learning with some ecological literacy. But ecological literacy is not the same as sustainability education, about how we live with each other as people on this planet within the planetary limits. So that hopefully clarifies some of the tensions within the field.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I have one more topic, but I don't want to talk too much. So if you have more ideas, maybe it's better that you introduce them.
Bueno, yo estaba pensando en una idea de la que hablabais antes en relación a la sostenibilidad. Me parece una gran aportación. A mí me ha ayudado mucho el trabajo de Namrata, me ha ayudado mucho a pensar en qué significa, ¿no? En educación, cuando hablamos de sostenibilidad, incluso en las universidades, ¿no? Se nos insta a trabajar sobre los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, ¿no? Pero creo que hasta ahora estamos trabajando de una manera muy parcial, intentando aproximarnos, ¿no? Puede que una de las dificultades para poder abordar la sostenibilidad es que hemos perdido tal vez esa interconexión o esa perspectiva de la interdependencia de la que también nos hablaba Namrata antes, de entender esa interdependencia entre los seres humanos, ¿no? y con la naturaleza también. Y en algunos foros con maestros, con educadores, cuando hemos hablado de este tema, me planteaban realmente cómo poder generar esa conexión, ¿no? Con esta perspectiva de tener en cuenta la sostenibilidad en una sociedad en la que vamos rompiendo vínculos, ¿no? Tanto entre seres humanos como con la naturaleza. Y en pocas ocasiones tenemos oportunidad de pensar cuál es nuestra propia relación con la naturaleza, ¿no? Entonces yo veo que hay pequeñas iniciativas, ¿no? Lo he hablado alguna vez con Alejandro, pues sobre el reciclaje o sobre... Pero creo que como no hay ese cambio epistemológico del que estábamos hablando, después nos encontramos con situaciones que no son lógicas o con incongruencias, porque estamos tratando de hablar de sostenibilidad y de respetar la naturaleza, pero después a lo mejor estamos haciendo, no sé, el día del carnaval y estamos utilizando un montón de materiales plásticos para crear un disfraz que solo se va a utilizar por unos minutos, no sé, se me ocurría como un ejemplo, ¿no? Entonces, me parece muy interesante estas pautas que nos hablaba antes Namrata, ¿no? El poder leerlas y poder inspirar a los docentes para poder profundizar de qué manera generar ese cambio epistemológico que nos permita abordar la sostenibilidad desde esa coexistencia armoniosa, ¿no? En español también hemos utilizado esa traducción que nos viene un poco del inglés, de la coexistencia armoniosa, la coexistencia pacífica o la coexistencia creativa, ¿no? Que en otros trabajos de Namrata ya también explica, ¿no? La diferencia o por qué a veces necesitamos traducirlo de diferente manera. Bueno, mi reflexión iba un poco por ahí y estaba pensando en de qué manera podemos mostrar a los docentes la necesidad de este cambio, ¿no? de mentalidad para tener más en cuenta la sostenibilidad, ¿no? También creo que daba antes también Namrata una pista y hablando, ¿no? de esa idea de la ciudadanía global. Otro concepto que me ha parecido muy interesante en su trabajo, cuando lo que hemos podido leer hasta ahora, ¿no? Cuando habla de la ciudadanía global o la ciudadanía planetaria, ¿no? Como la manera de tener en cuenta esas otras perspectivas que son menos, que están menos difundidas tal vez, ¿no? Y que sí que tienen más en cuenta esa interconexión con la naturaleza y con otros seres humanos, ¿no? Bueno, no es como tal una pregunta, pero de alguna manera muchas veces pienso de qué manera podríamos animar a los docentes a poder introducir este cambio de perspectiva en sus prácticas educativas.
Thank you, Anna. That is the key question, right? How do we enthuse ourselves as well as enthusing our colleagues to take some practical decisions, I think one of the ways I think is, of course, teachers are a key, change agents, but I think policies, university policies are also equally important, so the teachers get the support to do the needful. And I think at a university level, but also, of course, at other sort of institutional levels, can we, bring in policies that not just uphold ecological, awareness, but ecological justice, environmental justice. And what does that mean, for the university? But also bringing in with that aspects of social justice, you know. So these silo-based policies, many institutions like the green schools and eco schools are committed to a much more sort of, environment justice framework. But let's say if we really want to work on these integrated paradigms, that connect, that really look at the interconnections between humans and all species as an integrated whole, then we need not just environmental policies and environmental justice, we also need social policies, social justice related policies. And that's what the book is also trying to appeal to, are the policymakers, the administrators of universities, and of course, at a government and intergovernmental level, to bring those, to end those silo-based policies, to have a deeper commitment to understanding both environmental quality and human equality and the interconnections between those two, And in that framework, teachers would find it much easier to come up with teaching resources, get much more opportunities and funding and so on. And that's one of the things that the book proposes is the institutional commitment, to these goals. And so when you see the example of the Soka universities and Soka schools, we know that through, our engagement, and I know, Anna, you visited in person this, more very recently, and I think you might agree with me that there is this huge support, right, within Soka University, Japan, for example, Soka schools in Japan, and, other Soka institutions. And your institute is doing incredible work. But when we look at the institution, in the sense, the university and school as a whole, because they commit to these big integrated frameworks, Ikeda says, let's not just teach students about peace-related policies, let's combine that, with environmental policies. He says that for Soka University of America. And so they have in their curriculum integrated the two. But that's because there is an institutional commitment to integrated frameworks. And as a result, these institutions of Soka are also committing to sustainable development goals, the Earth Charter, which is another integrated framework. So teachers, can only do so much. We, all of us, right? How much can we do? We need institutional support. And so how can we drive that, level of change is what another thing that the book is really proposing. Otherwise, individual teachers will be doing good work, but we can do great work given the support.
Okay, well, one more question. As you mentioned, the political support of political institutions, I was also considering, what do you think about the political atmosphere now in the United States, that there is a huge change there? Will be supporting to all this notion of global citizenship, planetary citizenship, but not only in the United States. You mentioned in your book about Viktor Orban in Hungary, or Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. But even where we could quote or cite more politicians around the world, we are in the middle of a change in attitudes toward greenish policies at the moment. So considering this political context, do you think your book is going to be welcome? It's going to be more critical? It's more needed even? So what do you think about it in the light of all this current political atmosphere?
Thank you, Alejandro. I knew that question would come up, of course, because, that is the that is the challenge of this work at this time. Honestly, when I got the book contract to write this, and then when I was writing this, we were in a very different, political situation here in the U.S. U.S. had, President Biden was the president. We had gone back to signing the climate accords, the Paris Accords for climate change, the climate goals. And so I wrote it fearlessly. And the day I actually pressed enter to give the entire manuscript to my publisher, that's the day of the election here. I found that to be a crazy coincidence. And that whole night I couldn't sleep because I was like, should I just withdraw? Because chapter 1 talks about Donald Trump and he's not going to be happy. So there goes the chance of me being an education minister. No, but it was definitely not for that reason. It and still is, at a human level, just so worrying, right? Then as an educator and as a citizen and whatever, we are all living in a very difficult time. So there are so many things, from that question. One, and I think is a very important starting point, is the need for inclusive education. In the US, for those of us who are working on sustainability education and global citizenship, we should be mindful for the children who come from communities that are aware of climate change. So the children in many cases have climate anxiety, eco-anxiety, but we also need to be inclusive of those children who come from communities that are climate change deniers. This is an important position as teachers that we need to maintain, and I quote Jenkins in chapter 6, who talks how care discourses, along with social justice and ecological justice, we also need care theory. So we need to be committed to that. I need to be committed to that as an educator, which is going to be hard if that ever happens in my class. But second, I think is also equally important is the people and networks. So that was one of the things I feel in retrospect, a good contribution the book did, was to showcase some, worthwhile networks that have in fact stepped up their commitments since, the political crisis in the US and the ramifications worldwide. The Global Education Network Europe, the Angel Network, academic network on global education and learning that we are part of, all three of us here and maybe others in the room. These networks, the Earth Charter, have stepped up their commitments. Global Education Network Europe in particular works with policymakers across European countries, some European countries. And so it's a very kind of, it's doing work at a very strategic level in that sense. And they have stepped up their commitments because of this, current political crisis that we are going through in this world. So I think the importance of networks are key, in driving a meaningful, transformative experience. Collectively, we can do this. Individually, we can only go so far and not beyond.
And do you think that we can still talk about common values on education in this kind of situation that we are living, in which different countries are trying to create a difficult atmosphere of understanding? Can we talk about common values in the education all around the world?
That's such a great question, Anna. And I think, again, another thing that this book mentions is about the needs for political understandings. So when we look at the Earth Charter is this beautiful document that talks about how we all need to live as planetary citizens. This document had this amazing framing process of bringing in, a wide variety and diverse group of people from different sectors and regions of this earth to make this document possible many years ago. So we have this beautiful document that has this collective human values enshrined in it. But if we study how the charter was formed, some research studies suggest that it was not easy coming to conclusions. For example, one particular principle that talks about our relationship to Mother Earth, there was a lot of disagreements within the members of the framing members of the framing committee to agree what should be in that principle. Some said that, we should not slaughter animals. Others were like, oh, we can't do that. So let's have just, how can we avoid so how can we have a more humane way of slaughtering animals? And that's the language they agreed with. What I'm trying to say is, within the classroom, can we not just talk about the Earth Charter as this beautiful ethical document, but also bring in the Earth Charter as a tool to enhance political awareness, political understandings, that how values get negotiated within socio-political realities and within discussions and debates. When we as citizens are aware of such, political awareness and understandings, critical understandings, right from the classroom, we as a polity, we as citizens will be able to have those discussions. I don't think I have that type of an education, to be honest, that I can sit down with a Republican today, and just discuss policies. I don't think I have that necessary critical understanding, political understandings. I'm still developing it, through my work. But I wish that within my school classrooms, I got the chance to debate students who had a completely different viewpoint as compared to me, and then talk about how values can be negotiated in real, in the real world.
I think that we can open
Yes.
the conversation to all the people that is attending in the room. Así que si cualquier persona queréis participar, de momento hemos estado hablando más nosotros,
Sí.
pero tenéis la oportunidad ahora de hacerlo. Cualquier pregunta, comentario.
Tienes que pulsar seguramente al micrófono para que se te escuche, para que se encienda la luz.
Sí.
Hola, ¿sí? ¿Se me escucha?
Sí, sí. ¿Está verde?
No, no te escuchan. No te escuchan.
¿Qué es esto?
Ah, perdón. Ahora sí.
Hello, yes. I'm gonna try with my English. I want to understand a bit better the link between sustainability and inclusion, because for some reasons, for inclusion, I understand like respecting the cultures. As well, gender equality and human rights and everything. And I like to be a bit more, understand it a bit deeper, how to bring it alive in a classroom, both concepts together. I'm sure the answer is in your book, so maybe it's a bit too basic, my question, but I don't understand the link. I mean, there must be a reason where you found that these two concepts must be together.
Thank you so much. Could I have your name as well? I'd like to know.
Yes, sure. Susanna. My name is Susanna.
Susanna. Thank you,
Okay.
Susanna. So
Well,
lovely to meet you in, online. No, I think that basic question is a very important question. I really feel that's an important, critical question, because that is a question I don't think gets posed very often within sustainability education, although we do talk about it. So when we look at the effects of climate change, as one example of the planetary crisis that we are going through, the impact of climate change is disproportionate,
yeah.
with those countries in particular that are implicated, in the those countries that are facing the bigger effect of climate change are not necessarily the countries that are the big driving force behind climate change crisis. So that's inclusion, so we sort of have so that means including, various people that are suffering more. on
Okay.
account of us living in the global north. So that's a more inclusive approach. But there are so many other ways. An inclusive approach to sustainability also means to be mindful and inclusive of indigenous, peoples and communities, of indigenous knowledge and traditions, and to have a much more reciprocal and respectful attitude toward them, whether it is sustainability initiatives within a school that is situated, in a city. What is the, is it based on indigenous land, the school, and so on and so forth. So much more, kind of that is an inclusive way of engage in education. And then the third one, which I just mentioned in response to Anna, is also being inclusive of not, okay, so, the planet is coming to a crisis. When we teach in the class, we're so enthusiastic about it, and we want to show the melting glaciers of Alaska and, and so on and so forth. But it's not just about bringing this knowledge to the classroom. It's also being aware and inclusive of those children that are going through climate anxiety and eco anxiety. And, research, I draw in research from other scholars that have gone much more in depth into these type of studies. But I also then propose, let's be mindful of those students that come from families and communities who may be climate change deniers. So that's also inclusive, education. And then many more, that the book engages with. So thank you. That's a wonderful question.
Great, great. Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna try to talk, but I'm having issues with my voice, so I'll try and go for it. Hello, Namrata. I'm Paloma. We met last June. Thank you for this wonderful conversation we had in June and right now. I'm a teacher at school. I'm studying my PhD program as well. The first thought I had while listening to you is my teacher anxiety vibe I have, because we have like all this stuff going on, and I had this like thought of how can our students coexist with nature if they cannot coexist with each other. That's the first thought I had. But then, as you were talking about the change of paradigm, I got the idea that maybe it can turn around as well. How can they coexist with each other if they cannot coexist with nature? And I think like maybe that's the issue. Like we are not taking care of the base of our planet, and then how can we take care of each other? So I don't know if that was the idea you were trying to express, but that's what I got from that. And then you were talking about the power of debate in schools, and also it also rang a bell with me, because I think it's so powerful, schools as a society setting where education is promoted, like because in university the population you have around is already biased. So I'm a teacher, so I always think about schools, but schools itself, you coexist with people with such a variety of context, like this inclusion you were talking about right now, and it's so powerful. Right now, there's this subject in Spain which is called like social values and civic values, and that's compulsory in 5th grade. I'm teaching that at the moment, and the power of that subject, if teaching well, it's amazing. But the thing is, teachers get all this curriculum, all these policies you were talking about, but teachers are not trained to teach that kind of things. So you have to have, and we don't have time to think about how to teach those stuff, because right now I'm teaching human rights, and the like straightforward way to teach that is you have a worksheet, let's watch a presentation, let's watch a video and talk about it. But I had to think a lot about that, and then we're doing some debates, and then students are debating whether students should work at their parents' job or not, and they have like this kind of debates going on. But to get to that idea, and being, I don't know, it's kind of hard because you have to have the knowledge, which we talk about it like a lot. If you have the knowledge, then you have the intuition, and then you get to like the idea, but then we don't have the time. So I don't know, it's all of those thoughts. I don't know what to think about that.
It's so good to see you, Paloma.
Yeah.
I was in fact asking Anna. I said, how's Paloma doing? So I remembered our
I
conversation.
remember you a lot. I think about our conversation. Yeah.
Yes, me too. So I was asking Anna, and I'm so glad to see you're doing well, but do take care of your throat.
Yeah.
It's, I think, also the seasonal changes,
talking now.
I guess. No, thank you for both sort of comments and questions. You know, I really appreciate it. And I think you're right. I mean, the first one, which I mentioned earlier in relation to, I think, what Alejandro said, you know, that so we need to not just have this thing about social justice, you know, not just teach about social justice, but also like Nell Noddings talks about, you know, taken from Jenkins, but also like Nell Noddings talks about our care discourses, you know. So when we can bring in that level of care into our classrooms as teachers, you know, from an email we send to them, which sometimes I have to really work because I'm like shooting off emails, you know, from the email I send to them to just, you know, supporting them at different levels. How can we bring in those care, you know, caring for? And that, what Nell Noddings talks about, is leads to caring about. When we bring in caring for, we can also bring in caring about. So Nell Noddings talks about this. And so picking up from Nell Noddings, Jenkins says that, you know, within environmental justice, eco-justice, we talk about social justice and so on as well, but why not also bring in care discourses? Because to some extent, he says, and I loved what he says, is that, you know, to some extent, justice is about bringing in a level of equality, whereas care is about relationship. And I love that distinction, you know. So this is something really to think about. You can really sort of go into it. So how do we bring in a care discourse into the classroom so that students can care for the planet and each other? And the second thing, what you mentioned, the social values and civic values subject, I think you're right. It's such a fantastic, you know, opportunity for teachers. But also, as you mentioned, teachers are so restricted with the time, curriculum, you know, sort of policies and resources that they have to work with. And that's why, you know, some books, very few though, but there are some books that actually tell teachers this is what you need to teach, you know. Reamer's book talks about that. It's a book which is mainly for the International Baccalaureate in Global Education. But in this work of mine and my prior works, what I try to do is just give stimulating thoughts to teachers, stimulating questions to teachers, and a framework within which they can have much more reflective, critical thinking. And once teachers have that, you know, if someone poses a good question, it allows you to think, right, in a different way. And that's what the book is trying to do. It's trying to just pose these questions that's allowing us not to take what we are given for, you know, as the way to do things, whether it is in terms of the textbook or if we have a more objective view, you know, of what we are teaching, then we can develop much more subjective, you know, kind of tools and resources that we can bring into the classroom. So yes, you'll have to read chapter 7, please.
Yeah, yeah, I do have that noted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think your work is like the way to go to in this subject, like, because there's a lot of topics that you were talking about that are introduced in the curriculum, So yeah, very interesting. Next year I'll review the subject and with new approaches. Thank you.
Thank you. I would love to talk more about this with you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'll
let's
email.
meet in May for sure.
Okay,
And then,
I'll email you.
yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Les hemos ido un poquito más del tiempo, pero si alguien quiere participar, ahora o nunca. Okay, I think that we are more or less finishing. It's not going to be me who's going to finish it, but I want to thank you, Namrata. It's been a pleasure listening to you again, much more talking about these important topics. I hope we will have opportunity to deep this conversation, to talk in depth in the master, in the context of the master of innovation and value creation. And not only there, but also in your next visit to our university, probably in June. I hope we will be able to be together again. And I want to thank everybody to come, because I think it's always more meaningful when there is people listening and participating. Not only I want to thank all of you who came here today, that's really important. So it's great, because unless there is people, this is just like a private conversation. Although we know that it's not private because we are going to be located in YouTube, in the official university page in YouTube. So thank you for everybody that is going to watch this in any time. So I think that if you had your time involved watching us, so it's great. So we hope that you found this conversation also interesting and meaningful. And that's what I wanted to say just at the moment. But I want to once again give the last,
The last
words for Anna. The last, or whatever you want to be.
No. Well, just congratulations, Namrata, for this new book, this very inspiring work for us. I think that today we got, at least I had a lot of ideas for my work, very inspiring ideas that still help us to think how to improve our teaching, how to continue working with new teachers at the Faculty of Education, because I think we have a lot of risk and a lot of challenges, new challenges that are coming in some years also, because world is changing, as we were talking about. I think that your work will be very inspiring for us. So thank you very much. We will continue talking and dialoguing, and we hope you to have. We hope to have you here in the next June or May, as soon as possible. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to my friends and colleagues, Anna, Alejandro, and to all of you for being here today. I know it's a working day, and so, but I very much look forward to our discussions in person when we meet, maybe end of May.
Fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Namrata.
Bye.